Welcome to the Squeaky Bum Time Podcast with Laurent and not Mike. Mike is not around. He's drinking, apparently. It is Monday, the 15th of February, and in this episode, we are going to talk about the latest losings by Liverpool, the latest poor performance by Manchester United, and the latest Dushiko between Spurs and Manchester City. But first, Mike's not here, so I'm going to give it a take on some of the things that I've been thinking about, and it's narrative. The Premier League is an interesting league in that compared to American sports, there's not really that much access. And by access, we mean time to talk to the players, time to get information, to make up stories, right? You have a transfer period, but that transfer deadline is only in the summer or only in the winter for only 2 months at a time when players can change players. So you don't have I want to play the GM, where's this player going to go, who is disgruntled next, the way that the NBA has created a whole market for, the NFL has been working on, but the NFL, I'll talk about in a minute, is more like the Premier League. And baseball, which effectively invented the hot stove, which is the idea of where players are going during the winter and you're sitting around a hot stove talking about baseball. Soccer does not have a lot of that. It is reliant, and why the Premier League is so strange, it is reliant on only 3 things. 1, the games. So the games become narrative changing events. Did you win? Did you lose? Did you draw? What happened? What does that mean for the table being the standings? What the manager said. Managers are obligated to do a between 5 and 15-minute press conference before every game and after every game. And those press conferences are split into 2. In England, they respect embargoes. So basically, they get to have 2 days of stories based on what came out of that press conference. So they have embargo and non-embargo. And lastly, whatever comes out of the transfer market or whatever. So there's very little information. And so we create narratives out of those 2 things. And the third thing being the big driver of narrative of who are the big teams, who are the big stories. I would count in games as being referee decisions. I would count in games as being, things like that. So we have games, the referee decisions, and then 2 separate manager things. And then I guess the big narratives are the historical importance of the club. So Manchester United and Liverpool, who are the traditional powers of English football by a lot, like it's not close, they drive the narrative. So for instance, even though Manchester City is winning the league and winning every game by a lot, the narrative is not around Manchester City's games. You get a day or 2. Oh, look at Gundogan. He scored goals. Oh, look at Pep Guardiola. Look what he's doing. The narratives are, look at Liverpool. Look at the story of how they've collapsed. You get a bigger story. And then Manchester United, which is the biggest, one of the biggest teams in the world. They'd say Barcelona, Manchester United, Real Madrid, and Liverpool are the biggest teams in the world in terms of brand. Arsenal are up there too, but Arsenal right now, because they're not playing well, the narratives don't really work when your team is bad. You've got to be kind of good. Otherwise, people are like, come on, man, I don't want to hear about this shit. But those are the big 3. And so that's where the stories go. And as a fan of a relatively nouveau riche club, Manchester City has only been a non-local club for less than 10 years, or just over 10 years, since 2008. Yes, they have history, but it's local history. Manchester City's history is really of a local team on the west side of Manchester, and among local people who lived around that team, and that's what they were about. Yes, they had little appearances throughout history. They pop up here and there, but is really against Manchester United just in the backdrop of those things. They really don't have many European exertions. And so the context of when my team is great is juxtaposed against Liverpool. City aren't winning the league, Liverpool are losing. Manchester United aren't winning the league. They can't overcome City, right? City is just this robotic monolith. There's no stories around my team because we don't have fans. So we only come up as like who if a TV station or a news article writes a Manchester City story, it gets 10 clicks. If that story is about Manchester United, it gets 1,000 clicks. If it's about Liverpool right now, especially after they won, it gets 1,200 clicks. So it's all into scale. Anyway, that's how narrative works. And then, of course, when you're on Twitter, social media has become a new channel. But I think the traditional news people are not really taking it as a major path forward to talk about things. Yes, the players post on social media, but it's almost an extension of the boring post-game narratives. They don't really say anything. In fact, half of them probably don't even do it themselves. They hire people to be their social media managers. They put a photo and they put up, oh, let's go get more 3 points. It's very rare that there's an actual person behind them. So there's that. Let's go to the games though. So, and even in this podcast, we do go with the narratives, right? The narrative is Liverpool lost again. They lost to Leicester City in a chance for it was a top four clash, but now Liverpool sit in sixth and Leicester City sit in third on goal difference, 3-goal difference from Manchester United. And this was a game that Liverpool actually played well. They had the lead on an amazing goal by Firmino to Salah. But then 75th minute, mistake, Harvey Barnes scores, Vardy scores, and it just falls apart for Liverpool, and they lose 3-1. Not interesting because of the result. Interesting because Jurgen Klopp, after the game, again, we just have these media moments. There's post-game media, then there's newspaper media, and that's it. And that's all that drives the stories. Jurgen Klopp conceded the title. He looked broken. His mother had died, so it's sad. That's terrible. But that's where Liverpool are right now. They sit in sixth place, 13 points behind Manchester City, and City have a game in hand. So that happened. United, they drew with West Brom. This is now the second game or the third game of the season that United has dropped points against the bottom three. So they lost to Sheffield 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks, actually more than 4 games ago. I don't even know how many weeks ago. It might have been 3 weeks ago. And now they've dropped points to West Brom. Since they were declared the title when they were in first place for a week, they have fallen on hard times. They have got their last 5, lost to Sheffield, drew to Arsenal, beat Southampton 9-0, and then drew to Everton 3-3, and drew to West Brom. So they're not title contenders. Again, Ollie out, Ollie in, who the fuck knows? But they sit in second, and they are still having the same problems. They can't break teams down. This was an insipid performance. It was really bad. And, there were penalty, VAR, blah, blah, blah. I hate VAR. It's terrible. It becomes a talking point. Anyway, United are not challengers. Next up was Leicester. Leicester had a really good performance. Ndidi, of course, I talked about it. Vardy, I talked about them. They're both there. And they just cream Liverpool. They're just better right now. They have a lot of fight. They're quietly moving along. They don't have many great results, but they're staying in the top 4. They had a 0-0 versus Wolves, and they lost to Leeds, which was a great win for Leeds a couple weeks ago, and then a draw before that, 1-1. So they only have 2 wins in their last 5, but they're hanging in. The informed team of the top 4 is Chelsea, who've had an easy run of games since Tuchel took over. Wolves, they beat Burnley 2-0. They beat Tottenham 1-0. They beat Sheffield 2-1, and now they beat Newcastle 2-0. So Tuchel had a good run to jump in. They haven't really played anyone, but I think the key thing for them is they're not giving up any goals. And, if we look at what happened with City when they were sort of going back to the drawing board, Pep focused on defense first. Once the defense started working and the identity of the team changed, then they went to play. So I think Tuchel's focusing on the defense first and then moving along. Next, of course, we have to talk about the Hammers, who are just flying. They are in 5th, ahead of Liverpool. David Moyes beat Sheffield United 3-0 today after a Fulham draw and a win versus Villa. Listen, I've been singing the praises of Villa, but the secret team we have to love is our beloved West Ham. Now, they are flying in the sky a little bit. Of the top teams, they're the worst expected goal difference per 90. They're breathing in rarefied air and getting lucky, but you know what? The win's the wins and the luck is the luck. So you take it and you move on. They're playing great. They're doing awesome. Liverpool, we just way off the pace, just not scoring goals, not defending as well as they should, just in bad shape. Everton come off a loss. We move down the table one more. They lose to Fulham. Huge win for Fulham. Fulham are well loved. Everyone likes the way they're playing. This is a weird season where the bottom 3 are really good. There's not really any bad teams. But Everton having played that 5-4 game for 2 hours against Spurs midweek, they just didn't have any gear to fight. Same goes for Spurs against City. Just didn't have it. My throat's bothering me today. I'm going to have to end the pod early. Villa, sad draw versus Brighton. Brighton battered them. My guys, in 8th. Villa, incredible. Spurs hanging on in 9th, but have lost 4 of their last 5. And their last win was versus West Brom. So they're sliding. They've got to get back on track desperately. The magic of Kane and Son is slowed down a bit. Hugo Lloris has been poor. Son is cooled off, but he was scoring on like 60% of his shots. So that was to be expected. And Spurs now have Arsenal on their tail, 2-point gap. But Arsenal have played one more game. Arsenal beat Leeds in a really fun 4-2. Arsenal were up 4-0, but of course, Leeds. Leeds have to do their Leeds thing, and they grab 2 back and almost get a penalty to bring it to 4-3. But of course, it was an open game, up and down, typical Leeds. Leeds sit right behind Arsenal on 32. They're 2 points behind them. My throat's bothering me. Then we get on to Wolves and then Southampton. Both teams playing badly, but Wolves get a big win that they need, and Southampton have lost 6 in a row. Wheels have come off for them. We sung the praises of Hasenhüttl, but he's now got some trouble on his hands. The team's luck, which they had been riding early in the season to the good record, really has run out, and then some. So Hasenhüttl's trying. They're pushing. I don't think the team's given up on him, but they're definitely frustrated with where they are and how they're playing. Next is a sort of listless Crystal Palace, who, whenever Wilfried Zaha doesn't play, they lose. And of course, he hasn't played the last 2 games, and they have lost. So, but even their performances are bad for for Crystal Palace. I mean, giving up 3 goals to Burnley is just not great. Brighton gets another draw. They're unbeaten in their last 5, but with 3 draws. They completely annihilate Aston Villa, and of course don't score a goal because it's fucking Brighton. That's just what they do. They still have a positive expected goal difference, and they're 15th in the table. That is strange. That should not happen. So they need a striker. Hopefully they'll find one day. Burnley get their win 3-0. Newcastle lose to Chelsea, and the bottom 3 are still cut adrift, with West Brom playing the best of the group. I love my Sheffield, but Sheffield are still just not able to get results, and that's what we look like. United top of the table, City top of the table, followed by United, Leicester City, then Chelsea, then West Ham. That is your top 5 with Fulham, West Brom, and Sheffield in the bottom 3. Now, where do we go? We have midweek action. Burnley plays Fulham. Everton play Manchester City. Those are makeup games for COVID games that are being made up. So City will pick up their game in hand finally, and so will Fulham will pick up a game in hand, and so will Burnley and Fulham. Yep, they'll be even, and then City and Everton. No, City and Everton will make up 1, but then Aston Villa still has another pair to go, so there's a lot more to go for them. But this week, the Champions League returns. So that means that some of our friends, European football returns. So for the Champions League, let's just see where we are. Let's just see where we are. Liverpool play Leipzig. They got to have this. And Man City play Borussia Mönchengladbach the following week. Chelsea play Atletico the following week. And I think that's all we have. Oh, right, because United got bounced. Oopsie, there should be 4. Who's the other one that got bounced? Oh, I don't even remember. No, that's 3-4. Yeah. And in the Europa, I believe Spurs and Arsenal are still battling around. But let me just check. Let's see. United fall in, so United pick up Real Sociedad. Leicester plays Slava Prague. Arsenal, Benfica, tough. And Spurs are in here somewhere. I just don't know where. Oh, Wolfsburg. So there's that happening. That is the junior varsity. Will only come into play when the season gets round up. And we are finishing up. Without Mike, I just don't have the gear. Please let us know how you feel about the show. This was the Squeaky Bum Time Podcast. We record on Mondays and Thursdays. We review the Premier League. Please like, link, subscribe. Tell us how you feel. Mike will be back. And I don't think I made it to the Knox.